Hello Army, welcome back to the channel, and oh my goodness, do I have something for you today that is so unexpected, so genuinely delightful, and so perfectly representative of the kind of cultural reach that Jungkook has built for himself that I genuinely had to sit with it for a moment before I started filming. Because today we are not talking about a music chart. We are not talking about a streaming record or a tour announcement or a magazine cover or a fashion campaign. Today we are talking about literature. Today we are talking about books. Today we are talking about the fact that Jungkook of BTS has been mentioned, by name, in print, in an actual published novel, in a book that reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and #1 on the Sunday Times bestseller list simultaneously. We are talking about Ali Hazelwood's Check-in Mate, and we are talking about what it means that one of the most widely read authors working in popular fiction today looked at the cultural landscape and decided that the most natural, most recognizable, most universally understood reference point for a certain kind of magnetic, impossible-to-ignore human presence was Jungkook. So get comfortable, Army. This one is going to be a full and very satisfying deep dive. Let's start by making sure everyone watching this video understands exactly who Ali Hazelwood is and exactly what Check-in Mate is, because the context matters enormously when you are trying to appreciate the full significance of what has happened here. Ali Hazelwood is a best-selling author who works primarily in the romance fiction space, and she has become one of the most successful and beloved writers in that genre over the last several years. Her debut novel, The Love Hypothesis, was a phenomenon. It started as fan fiction, was developed into a traditionally published novel, and immediately became a massive bestseller that introduced her to a readership spanning multiple countries and multiple demographics. She writes with wit and warmth and a deep understanding of what makes characters feel real and three-dimensional, and she has built an enormous and devoted readership that overlaps, perhaps not surprisingly, with fandoms and fan communities in ways that other authors' readerships sometimes do not. Check-in Mate is one of her most recent works and it is, by any measure, a remarkable success story. Reaching #1 on the New York Times bestseller list is one of the most significant achievements in American publishing. It means your book is being read by an enormous and diverse audience, it means booksellers across the country are recommending it, it means it has crossed over from genre readership into mainstream cultural consciousness. And reaching #1 on the Sunday Times bestseller list simultaneously means the same thing is happening in the United Kingdom. This is not a niche publication or a cult favorite. This is a book that millions of people read. And in that book, on those pages that millions of people have turned, there is a character who is described in a way that invokes Jungkook so specifically and so clearly that Army immediately recognized it, and the author herself has confirmed the connection. Now let's talk about the specific passage, because this is the heart of the story and it deserves proper attention. The passage in question comes from a scene in which the narrator is observing a character, someone who has an undeniable quality of presence, an almost magnetic pull that makes people respond to him instinctively and positively. The character arrives and the narrator notes that her sisters are as happy to see him as they'd be with Jungkook. Then she reflects on this, thinking about an interview she saw of Jungkook years ago, how stern and guarded he seemed, and notes that she can barely recognize the open, smiling boy who later emerged, who gives Darcy a PetSmart gift card, lets Sabrina show him 2 hours of roller derby videos, raises one eyebrow at the matchup on the table. I want to stay with this passage for a moment because there is so much in it. First, the most obvious point, Ali Hazelwood did not just throw Jungkook's name into her novel as a casual pop culture reference the way an author might mention a movie title or a song. She used him as a specific and meaningful point of comparison for a character trait she was trying to convey. The trait in question is that universal, cross-demographic quality of being someone that people are simply happy to see. Not impressed by, not starstruck by, not intimidated by, just genuinely, warmly, instinctively happy to encounter. That is a very specific quality and it is a very meaningful one. And Hazelwood reached for Jungkook as the most natural shorthand for it. Think about what that means. When you are writing a novel and you want to convey something about a character, some quality that you need your reader to immediately understand and feel, you reach for a reference that you are confident your reader will recognize and respond to. You use cultural touchstones that carry the right emotional weight. And Hazelwood, writing for a readership of millions, decided that the most efficient and most resonant way to communicate this particular quality was to invoke Jungkook. She trusted that her readers would know who he is. She trusted that his name would carry the specific emotional connotation she was reaching for. She trusted that the quality of making people feel genuinely happy in your presence, that warm, magnetic, universally accessible charm combined with depth and complexity underneath, was something that readers would immediately associate with Jungkook. That level of cultural currency is not something that happens quickly, and it is not something that happens by accident. It is the result of years of consistent, authentic presence in the cultural conversation. Jungkook has been building this for his entire career, not just as a performer, not just as a global pop star, but as a human being whose personality and character have become genuinely known and genuinely beloved far beyond the boundaries of any fandom. When a novelist who writes for a mainstream audience uses your name as shorthand for a specific and admirable human quality, it means you have crossed over into something broader than celebrity. It means you have become a cultural reference point. It means you have become, in some meaningful sense, a shared cultural language. The second element of that passage that deserves attention is the more detailed observation Hazelwood makes about Jungkook himself, about how stern and guarded he seemed in an early interview, and how different he became. This is not just a name drop. This is evidence that Hazelwood has actually engaged with Jungkook's story, has watched his evolution, has noticed the specific and quite beautiful journey from the serious, contained, slightly defensive young man he sometimes appeared to be in early interviews to the warm, playful, genuinely open person he has become. That arc is one that ARMY knows deeply and intimately. We have watched it in real time over many years. And to see a mainstream author not only notice it but articulate it with such specificity, the stern-guarded quality of early Jungkook, the open smiling quality of the Jungkook we know now, is genuinely moving. Because it means that the story of who Jungkook is and how he has grown has been visible and legible not just to ARMY, not just to people who have followed him closely, but to a broader cultural observer who encountered him through whatever combination of sources and paid enough attention to notice the transformation. That kind of observation does not come from a casual acquaintance with someone's work. That comes from genuine engagement. And the fact that a best-selling author was genuinely engaged enough with Jungkook's story to notice and articulate that specific evolution tells you something really beautiful about the reach and the depth of his cultural impact. Now let's pull back and think about this in the context of Ali Hazelwood's specific readership and what it means that her novels carry Jungkook's name to those readers. Hazelwood writes primarily for an audience of young adults and adults who are readers of romance and character-driven fiction. This audience is large, diverse, and global. It includes a lot of people who are not K-pop fans, who may not follow BTS closely, who may know Jungkook's name in a general cultural awareness sense without being deeply familiar with his work. And now those readers, those millions of people who picked up Check and Mate because they loved the Love Hypothesis or because it was recommended to them or because it was sitting at #1 on the bestseller list and they were curious, those readers have encountered Jungkook's name in a context that frames him in an entirely positive and genuinely meaningful way. They have encountered him as someone whose presence makes people happy. They have encountered him as someone who has grown from a guarded, serious young man into someone warm and open and real. They have encountered him as a cultural reference point that a respected and widely read author trusted her mainstream audience to understand. And for some of those readers, that encounter in the pages of a best-selling novel might be the beginning of a deeper curiosity. It might be the moment that makes someone search his name, watch a video, listen to a song, and discover for themselves what ARMY has known for years. Literature has always been a vehicle for cultural discovery, and in this case, Check and Mate is potentially introducing Jungkook to readers who might never have found him through any other channel. This is also a moment to reflect on something broader about the relationship between K-pop and BTS specifically, and global mainstream culture, because the Check and Mate mention is not an isolated incident. It is one data point in a pattern that has been building for years. BTS and their individual members have been referenced in mainstream Western media, in television shows, in films, in journalism, in academic papers, in political speeches, and now in fiction literature that reaches the top of the most prestigious bestseller lists in the English-speaking world. Each of these references represents a moment when someone outside of the K-pop bubble decided that BTS, or in this case specifically Jungkook, had enough mainstream cultural recognition to serve as a reference point for a general audience. And what is remarkable about the trajectory of these references is how they have evolved. In the early days of BTS's Western crossover, references to them in mainstream media tended to be explanatory, they came with context, with clarification, with the implicit acknowledgement that the audience might not know who these people are. But increasingly, as the years have passed and the cultural presence of BTS has deepened and solidified, the references have become matter of fact. They have become the kind of shorthand that assumes recognition rather than explaining it. Hazelwood does not explain who Jungkook is in that passage. She does not provide context or clarification. She simply uses his name as if, of course, her readers know who Jungkook is, and of course his name carries the specific emotional resonance she is reaching for. That assumption of recognition is the real marker of mainstream cultural arrival. Let's also talk about the community dimension of this discovery, because the way ARMY found and shared this passage is itself a beautiful story about what makes this fandom so remarkable. The passage in Check and Mate was not discovered through any official announcement or press release. It was discovered because someone in the ARMY community was reading the book because Hazelwood has a readership that overlaps significantly with K-pop fandom and recognized Jungkook's name on the page and immediately shared it. From there, it spread through the community with the combination of speed and enthusiasm that characterizes the best ARMY moments, fans sharing screenshots, finding the exact passage, discussing its significance, tracking down the author's own comments about it, and amplifying the moment until it reached people who had not read the book and might not have encountered it otherwise. That process of collective discovery and celebration is one of the things that makes being ARMY genuinely special. Other fandoms exist and other fandoms are dedicated and passionate. But there is something about the particular combination of attentiveness, intelligence, and genuine love for their subject that makes ARMY uniquely good at finding these moments, these places where Jungkook's influence and presence has seeped into parts of the culture that you might not expect to find it, and bringing them to light and celebrating them in ways that do justice to their significance. And the significance here is real. It is easy to look at a single passage in a novel and think, well, it is just a name drop, it is just a reference, it does not mean that much. But that reading misses the forest for the trees. The name drop is not the point. The point is what the name drop represents, the accumulated weight of years of cultural presence, the consistent and authentic humanity that has made Jungkook's name carry meaning beyond the K-pop sphere, the specific qualities of character and presence that a thoughtful author recognized and wanted to invoke. The point is that when Ali Hazelwood sat down to write a scene about a character who makes people feel instantly and genuinely happy, she thought of Jungkook. Not as a casual pop culture reference, but as the most precise and resonant way to communicate something specific and meaningful about a human quality that she admired. That is an extraordinary thing. And it deserves to be recognized and celebrated as exactly the extraordinary thing it is. Let's also spend a moment on what Jungkook himself would probably think about this, because knowing what we know about his character and his relationship with his work and his fans, I think his reaction would be a very specific combination of things. There would be genuine surprise, not false modesty, but real astonishment that a best-selling novelist had included him in her work in this way. There would be warmth and appreciation, because Jungkook is genuinely moved by evidence that people care about him and engage with his story. There would probably be curiosity about the book itself, because Jungkook is someone who engages with culture broadly and would likely want to read Check and Mate. And there might also be a kind of quiet, almost private satisfaction at the specific observation Hazelwood made about the stern-guarded early version of himself and the more open present version. Because that journey has been real and it has been meaningful, and having it noticed and articulated by someone outside of his immediate world would probably feel significant in a way that chart records and streaming numbers do not. Jungkook has always been someone who values genuine connection and genuine recognition over statistical achievement. The numbers matter to him, but they matter because of what they represent, the reach of the music, the size of the community that is formed around BTS and around his solo work. What moves him more than the numbers is evidence of real human engagement, of people genuinely receiving and responding to who he is rather than just consuming what he produces. And Ali Hazelwood's Check and Mate passage is evidence of exactly that kind of engagement, a writer sitting with the cultural landscape, noticing Jungkook, understanding something specific and true about him, and finding a way to carry that understanding into her work. Now I want to bring this back to the present moment and talk about why this particular discovery feels especially significant right now in 2026. We are in what many people are calling the most important and most exciting chapter of Jungkook's career, the post-military return, the Ararang album, the world tour, the Rolling Stone cover, the Calvin Klein campaigns, all of it converging into a period of extraordinary creative and commercial and cultural momentum. And into that moment comes this discovery of a novel mention that speaks to something different from all of those achievements. The tour dates and the streaming records and the magazine covers are all markers of professional achievement. But being woven into a best-selling novel is a reference point for a specific and admirable human quality that is a marker of something more personal, more lasting, more genuinely cultural. It is a marker of the kind of presence that outlasts chart positions, that transcends the cycles of the music industry, that exists in the broader cultural memory as a reference point rather than just as a product. And the fact that this is happening for Jungkook in 2026, at this peak moment of his career, alongside all of the other markers of his extraordinary impact, feels exactly right. It feels like one more piece of a picture that has been assembling for years and is now coming into full focus, the picture of an artist who has not just succeeded commercially but has genuinely entered the cultural fabric of his time. ARMY has always believed this would happen. We have always believed that the qualities we saw in Jungkook from the beginning, the talent, yes, but more importantly the genuine humanity, the warmth, the growth, the honesty, the specific and irreplaceable combination of discipline and joy that characterizes everything he does, would eventually be recognized beyond the boundaries of the fandom, would eventually become legible to the broader culture in ways that matched how clearly we have always seen them. And moments like this check and mate discovery are the proof that we were right. The world is catching up. Slowly, in the way that the world always moves slowly, but surely. A best-selling novelist noticed Jungkook. She understood something true about him. She put his name in her book and trusted that her readers would understand the reference. And now those readers, all those millions of people who have held check and mate in their hands and turned its pages, carry a tiny piece of Jungkook with them whether they know it or not. That is what cultural impact actually looks like. Not just the numbers. Not just the records. But the quiet, persistent way that a genuinely remarkable person's existence becomes part of the shared language of their time. Jungkook is part of the shared cultural language now. A New York Times #1 best-selling author put him there, on the page, in ink, alongside her characters, and called him by name. And ARMY found it, as ARMY always does, and brought it to the light, as ARMY always does, and celebrated it, as Jungkook and every achievement connected to him absolutely deserves to be celebrated. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, it genuinely helps the channel grow and helps more ARMY find this content. Drop a comment below telling me your reaction when you first heard about this novel mention. Did you already know about it, or is this the first time you are hearing it? And if you have read Check and Mate, drop a comment about that too because I would love to know what you thought of it. Subscribe if you have not already, share this with your fellow ARMY, and I will see you in the next one. Purple you all.